It's usually the left who are accused of not supporting our troops or being unpatriotic. But it's actually right-wingers who can't stop disrespecting veterans. In 2018, when Donald Trump missed a remembrance event in France, he was reported to have said, quote, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." He was also reported to have called Americans who died in the war suckers for getting killed. Closer to home, you'll remember Rishi Sunak's lowest moment in his disastrous election campaign this year was when he came home early from an event celebrating D-Day veterans. He did that to pre-record a TV interview. Of course, the title of Master of Disrespect remains with Donald Trump, though, and he has taken another swipe at soldiers.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's and they're rated equal.
They're rated equal. He was talking there about Miriam Adelson. She's the wife of mega donor Sheldon Adelson, who Trump granted the Medal of Freedom in 2018, essentially just for giving him money, right? Just a very wealthy person who donates to his campaign. But he says that medal, the Medal of Honor is, or the Medal of Freedom is better than the Medal of Honor, because the Medal of Honor, that goes to veterans. And yeah, I mean, the prize is equal, but they're going to be either like really injured or dead. So it's better to get the one that's equal, but you can go up there and look gorgeous and amazing. Aaron, what's going on with conservatives and veterans at the moment? You know, they just keep insulting them.
Trump is a really strange guy, Michael. Like he keeps on, he does all the stuff that you just wouldn't expect a conservative to do. Of course, he tries to lean into being, tough on law and order. He loves the police. He's, the US military was never so good as it was under him, although he didn't use it. Of course, he would say in typical Trumpian fashion, we didn't have to use it. It was so good. Everyone was too scared. But then he does things like, this is, we saw it John McCain as well, right? People saying he's a veteran. He won Purple Hearts. He was a POW in Vietnam. And Trump said, quite amusingly, to somebody who doesn't really care, because I'm not American national, but obviously it's an outrageous thing to say, if he was so good and so smart, he wouldn't have got caught. It's like, can you imagine that rationale with POWs? If you had a British Prime Minister who was talking about, say, British prisoners of war held in awful conditions in East Asia during the Second World War, they were captured at Singapore, maybe. They were held in awful conditions, often in Southeast Asia, by the Japanese Imperial Army. Horrific conditions. Can you imagine a British Prime Minister saying, well, they're not really heroes, they got caught? Or, the fall of Singapore, when the Japanese Imperial Army, routs the Brits. It's the biggest ever surrender by the British Army, ever. Can you imagine a British Prime Minister or a British party leader say, they aren't heroes, they lost, I don't like losing? It's so impossible to translate that to a British context. Like, you'd be over, especially if you're a Conservative Party leader. You would be over, you'd be kaput. And I think actually, again, bringing it back to the UK, and one of the problems for Farage is he sometimes says and does like outrageous things because he thinks that translates a little bit better. It played okay, or maybe even well with Trump, so it'll play well here. Well, not necessarily. Trump does say some absolutely bizarre stuff. But the thing is, as we all know, he doesn't need to win the actual overall vote, the popular vote, in order to become the president. He needs to win the right votes in the right places. But this is why he didn't win the popular vote in 2016 or 2020, and it's why he won't win the popular vote in 2024.
We got one more Trump moment for you from this week. This time he's talking about the dangers of Kamala Harris.
You're all going to be thrown into a communist system. It's a communist system. You're going to be thrown into a system where everybody gets health care. You wait for your doctor like 10 months, 12 months, 11 months. You got to see some of these plans, how they work in other countries. It's disgraceful. So private health care is gone. She wants it out.
You're going to be in a communist system. Everybody gets health care. Although, you do have to wait for a while for health care in this country, but No one is really gagging for the American model. That vision of communism, Aaron. I mean, the clip that went viral actually didn't have him talking about the queues. It just had him saying, "You're going to live under communism. You're all going to get healthcare." And then obviously he went on to say, "It will be free, but you'll have to wait for it," which kind of is, in a way, is a valid description of Britain at the moment. But it doesn't need to be what Britain is like.
I don't think people realize how bad US healthcare actually performs in terms of the measures that really matter. You look at life expectancy, for instance. Life expectancy in Cuba is better than the United States. Life expectancy in China is better than the United States. Life expectancy in Turkey is better than the United States. A woman in Bosnia, one of the poorest countries in Europe, is less likely to die giving birth than a woman in the United States. By far the world's largest economy, by nominal GDP. So, I mean, that is just absolutely extraordinary. And the idea that you would make a joke about access to free healthcare, given that, crazy. Before the events of last year, more or less, I believe, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong. More or less, the average, I believe, the average man in Gaza had the same life expectancy as the average African American. I think more or less. What I do know is that in the state of Kerala in India, median life expectancy has been higher than that of African American for a pretty long time. It talked about by Amartya Sen in a book he wrote, Development as Freedom. You know, when you have those kinds of statistics, you have very objectively poor countries doing much better than you. I think also China, right? It's really difficult to sell your system as superior when China's GDP per head is what, a sixth, a seventh of the US, and it's already giving better health outcomes in terms of people living longer. Crazy. And then, of course, some people who defend the US come back and say, no, on the measures that really matter, the US healthcare system's really good. What, like life expectancy? Okay, if that's what it is, if communism means better life expectancy, I'll take it.
Really not defending the American healthcare system, which I think is not a good system. It's okay in Germany, it's okay in France. America's not. But I think probably the reason America has a very low life expectancy isn't so much to do with the healthcare; it's to do with the guns and the fentanyl. So presumably that is skewing that data somewhat. What do you think?
The guns, I don't know. Fentanyl, certainly, deaths of despair. But you can't say, hey, look, you know what? Don't criticize our healthcare system. The real reason why actually we're being outperformed by other countries is because of deaths of despair. I mean, that's also a public health crisis, right? The reason why so many people are hooked to fentanyl is because of the awful incentives built into the private healthcare model of the United States. You know, you had a PR and marketing effort by one particular pharmaceutical company basically incentivizing doctors to lie to patients about how addictive fentanyl was. Really extraordinary. Giving away cuddly toys of cute little fentanyl pills to children. That's what was happening. So I don't think that's a good defense of the US healthcare model, Michael. I know you're not saying that, but that's my rebuttal.
I 100% take your point on fentanyl. I would say that the guns thing is separate and does lower life expectancy, because the other thing when you think life expectancy is 75, that doesn't mean you're expected to die at 75. Most people will die at 80, but if enough people die at 25, then that lowers the level. So guns does really matter when it comes to the American life expectancy, but so does fentanyl. And I stand corrected. That is definitely not separate from the healthcare system, because the reason why everyone was able to get addicted to fentanyl in America, whereas it in Europe is, as you say, because the incentives are completely warped in America. We have the NHS it's called NICE. I don't know what it stands for, but that's the organization which sort of they get together and they say, is this the kind of drug that doctors should be giving out in Britain? It's based on sort of the evidence base, but also the price of it. That means they can sort of bargain with pharmaceutical companies to get the price down. And, fentanyl didn't get through. Whereas, as you say, in America, not only do you have adverts to the public, but you also have all of these salespeople going around to GP practices. I don't know what they call them there, but the doctors' practices, and telling people that this is the drug you've got to get your patients hooked on. So no, you're right, Aaron. Their healthcare system does have a lot to do with their lower life expectancy.